Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time from your busy schedules to attend today's live Quick 30 webinar. Presenting today will be Alex Orr, Vice President of Sales here at EverLast Lighting. Alex, who many of you will have interacted with at one time or another, holds a master's degree. Presenting today will be Alex Orr, Vice President of Sales here at EverLast Lighting. Alex, who many of you will have interacted with at one time or another. Sorry about that technical difficulty here. Alex, who many of you will have interacted with at one time or another, holds a master's degree from Spring Arbor University and brings a decade's worth of experience to EverLast. It is this combination of experience and education which has been instrumental in getting EverLast Lighting into some of the nation's largest steel mills and heavy industrial plants. Before I hand this over to Alex, I'd like to encourage you to take advantage of the chat window located to the right of this video. We'll have members of our sales team on hand to answer your questions there. Thank you again, and now I'll turn this over to Alex Orr.
Thank you, Jamie, for the introduction. I'm going to do my part as best as possible to be diligent in keeping this to 30-ish minutes. The group that's calling in today are from a variety of different area codes, so we have a ton of time zones to consider when we're arranging and scheduling these types of things. So we do our best to, and I hope 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time has been a good time for all of you. As Jamie had mentioned, please feel free to utilize that chat function on the right-hand side of the video, and we will have inside sales team members standing by to answer any of the questions that you might have. So as always, our Quick 30 webinar really will just align with all of the sales and marketing information that you've been sent over the last month. So we have a director of marketing, and then Jamie also supplements some of those efforts as well and sends out a variety of marketing literature and videos and things like that over the course of a month. And the series of the month for August is the 65C13 Heavy Industrial High Bay. And for those of you that don't know, or maybe this is the first time joining one of these, the 65C13 is really our 149 degree F ambient temperature rated high bay. It will be, this is going to be focused more so on how to sell in the heavy industrial applications. However, I'm going to be discussing some of the various features and benefits throughout this webinar. But really focusing on the core objective, which is going to be how to sell more objectively, or effectively rather, in heavy industrial applications. Selling in the heavy industrial applications really is going to consist of 3 main steps. Those 3 main steps really are going to be getting your foot in the door and truthfully keeping it there, because that's probably one of the most important ones. You're going to go through the fixture selection, which is choosing the right fixture for the job or fixtures for the job, and then closing the deal. So those are going to be the 3 main focal points that you're going to be looking at for the first steps of selling heavy industrial applications. Getting your foot in the door. So getting your foot in the door really is going to start with proper prospecting and qualifying. And because those of you that have listened to me speak before, or I've gone and done an in-person presentation with you for training and that type of thing, you know that I hit on largely the relationship piece of all this. And really what you're going to want to do is just make sure that the customer is right for you, ensuring that there's good profile alignment, that there's, from a good relationship standpoint, the customer is somebody that you're going to want to align really well with. And you're going to want to do this right from the start, because as large as some of these customers are, people will talk, and as you're pressing forward, you're going to want to make sure that you're not finding out later that you don't co-align with these people very well, and that you're going to try to do an end around, because it will come back and bite you. And truthfully, there's nothing worse than that in a steel plant or in heavy industrial, is to find out that somebody's done an end around. So definitely avoid doing that. This is a two-way street, and these heavy industrial customers are very loyal. So this is an opportunity that really should keep on giving to you, but you're going to want to make sure that you keep your foot in the door, as I mentioned before. Once all of that qualifying and so on is complete, you're going to want to, at that point, you're really going to know what the customer is looking for, because you've been listening the whole time. What are the hot buttons? What are the things that are setting the customer off, that have really got you there to begin with? Listening is going to build a culture of success, and really ultimately that's going to lend to focusing on the needs of the customer throughout this entire process. And they will, through the listening process, they will tell you what you need. You're just going to have to listen and make sure. And some of those things that you're going to notice are, they might start talking about health and safety. Are improved light levels their hot button? Let's see here. Often these heavy industrial facilities have an increased turnover rate relative to the other industries. And with higher turnover rates become higher safety concerns. With these new people walking around the facility and so on, they're going to be concerned about light levels. Heavy industrial facilities are filled with trip hazards, heavy equipment, machines, fork truck traffic, etc. And all of those things become really, really significant hazards for you. Anytime someone has to get into a lift, there is going to be added risk there. So you're going to want to make sure that you're listening for those health and safety concerns. From an operational standpoint, they might start talking about productivity and efficiency of employees. And you really just want to make sure you're focused that we're talking about it in the context of speed or the productivity measure, because really this looks like it, I guess, rather than taking it in the context of speed or productivity, you're going to want to look at it from the standpoint of lost opportunity. Is your maintenance time spent maintaining the lighting and things like that, or the preventative maintenance on machinery? Are those things that are being bypassed because you are maintaining your lighting? And if so, that's certainly something that you're going to want to look at. Are you experiencing unscheduled shutdowns? Are there issues with lighting shutting down in certain sections of your plant, or you're having unscheduled maintenance shutdowns for other machinery and things like that because you're focused on lighting? A goal of the operational side is really to minimize lighting change out and maintenance schedules. Is one of the hot buttons energy costs? You really got to look at this one tight and close, because this might end up being a very slippery slope for you, and really only play this card if you need to. And mainly because the money or energy that's tied or associated with the lighting is minor in the grand scheme of their total energy spend there. I would use my, early on in my lighting career, I went to an electroplating facility, and for whatever reason, the first thing I mentioned when I went into this facility, the lighting looked great, the light levels were fantastic, everything looked and was operating properly. And I went in there, and the first thing I said was, aren't you really happy with how much money you're saving on all the energy from the light fixtures? And the guy said, unfortunately, I don't even notice it. It's just a blip on the radar. This is an electroplating facility. So when I went there to, high five the guy, so to speak, on how awesome the energy savings was, it was really inconsequential, and it was just really out of place. So avoid only playing the energy costs and energy saving standpoint or card when it makes sense. You can play it when the ROI is quick, which it will likely be in some of these heavy industrial, because you're going to have 1,000-watt metal halides very often in some of these types of facilities. You're going to be switching down to a 480 watt, a 500 watt, a 400 watt. Even if you go down to one of our 720 watt units, those are, you still have significant energy savings there. And it's going to help you achieve a very, very quick ROI. And when your customer has a lot of other capital projects in the pipeline, you can use the ROI and the energy savings here. And the reason why it's important here and not otherwise is because you can play the card where you say, you know what, the amount of money that we're going to save you from the energy of using these light fixtures, you now can fund some of these other projects. And it really just downplays the money that they're going to be spending on this lighting project, and really kind of shifts the focus back onto how they're going to be able to start funding some of these other capital expenditures with the savings from the lighting project. And then, of course, you always can play the rebates. Are there rebates available in your area? If so, they oftentimes pay a substantial portion of the lighting project or for the lights because of the drastic energy savings. So as we move on to the fixture selection portion, we have our base module here of the 65C13 series offered in both the 200 and the 240 watt. And you can see the applicable lumen packages there. Shifting over into the center here. That is our aluminum 22-inch reflector. So as we start to move our ceiling heights up, obviously you're going to want to add a reflector to give you those ideal distribution patterns for various mounting heights. And then on your far right, we have our 65C13 multi-modules in the 400, the 480, 600, and 720 watt models, with nearly reaching the 100,000 lumen packages there. So as you can see, a gamut of products that are going to help you achieve virtually any light level that you're going to need for these heavy industrial facilities. Something to keep in mind also, that these are all tunable. So if you see on your left-hand side, you have a 200 watt and you have a 240 watt, those can actually be tuned down. They can be tuned down to 100 watt or 150 watt, just kind of going to some plain numbers that you're used to seeing, or wattage packages rather, that you're used to seeing on our line card. These are also 0 to 10 volt dimming, feature a glass over optic. So for those areas where you might have some embers and things like that in the air, these are suitable for those types of applications. You won't have to worry about the optics melting or anything like that. Another very important feature of these fixtures, I believe, is the voltage ranges. So these fixtures range from 120 to 277, and then the UH version, or the high voltage version, ranges from 277 to 480. So we have that middle ground overlap. And what that really allows you to do is take the 277 to 480 volt version, and it allows you to kind of to go single skew, if you will, in some of these plants, which is really important. You can kind of shift and maneuver some of these fixtures, order one skew, move it around as needed. Huge benefit. I want to talk a little bit about our cold forging heat sink technology. Cold forging, as you've probably heard me preach before, cools much more effectively than extruded aluminum or die cast solutions. Pure aluminum cools to 226 watts per meter Kelvin, while the best aluminum extrusions only cool to 160 to 200 watts per meter Kelvin. And the best die cast, unfortunately bringing up the rear, only cool to 60 to 90 watts per meter Kelvin. So as you start to look at the different fixture types that are out there, and somehow when you start looking at comparing their fixtures to ours, you're going to start to notice a ton of die casting and a ton of extrusions. And not that there's anything wrong with them per se, because they still do have transmittant and cooling properties. They're just not quite as good as the cold forging technology. And as you start going and continue going through your fixture selection process, the construction and all the grades of the materials that are being used will become an important factor in your decision, and really should be. Even when you start looking down at the chips, we use several low or mid-power chips in our fixtures, and we do this purposefully because we want to effectively manage our heat sinking and ensure that we're ridding highly concentrated areas of heat within the fixture. So we use several chips, spread them out on our cold forged heat sink, and really that allows our heat sink to dissipate the heat really, really effectively. So as we move over, this is kind of a unique slide, I believe. It's not necessarily lumen maintenance, but it kind of is in a way, because the competition still isn't maintaining their lumen output once they start getting past 50C. And the reason why, and this is not over any length of or period of time, this is just hour one. As the ambient temperature creeps over that 50C mark, you're going to start to see a level of degradation or just sheer tuning down, and what many of them call, I believe it's dynamic temperature sensing or something of that nature. And we don't need to do that because our drivers are robustly engineered to withstand 65C degree temperatures without needing to tune itself down to decrease the temperature of the critical components on the board itself. We don't need to do that. This really becomes an important part of the discussion throughout all this, because when you start looking at Lumen packages, you don't want to have to oversize and overspend on a Lumen package that your fixture will never operate at. Stop and think about that for a second. If you're buying a 50,000 Lumen package, you want 50,000 lumens. I mean, that's just what you're paying for. Don't stand for buying 70,000 lumens to ensure that it's going to safely operate at 50. So you start kind of looking at this graph, and that's exactly what happens is their fixtures start to tune down after 50C, and you're paying for a 70,000 lumen fixture, and you're only getting it to operate at 50,000 lumens when you start creeping up past 50C. And unfortunately, that's just what you get. However, if you kind of start looking at the EverLast route and start looking at the 65C13 series, you're going to notice that we don't even publish this type of curve because it doesn't exist for our fixture. So the last step is really closing the deal. And this is truthfully the last main step in landing more of the heavy industrial high bay projects. And there's really three main tips to closing the deal. And that is maintaining your patience, making sure that you're leveraging all of your assets that you possibly can throughout the way, and staying focused throughout the process. When I start talking about maintaining patience, I've been involved in many heavy industrial projects, whether it be pulp and paper or big steel or what have you. And these are just slow moving projects. That's just the nature of the beast. There's several people involved, there's many moving parts, and there's also often emergencies that are going to take precedent over the lighting project, and maintenance guys that are supposed to be directing or running the lighting project are going to get pulled off of there and moved over to a different area. That's just the way it happens. These projects by nature have extremely long cycle times from quote to close, and they are likely going to be quoted 4 or 5 different ways along, throughout the quoting process. Just do yourself a favor and stay patient and don't get frustrated. Leveraging your assets. So many of you are going to walk into these facilities with a distributor or with a manufacturer, and I would just encourage you to leverage one or both of them as often as you can. These distributors that you work with are going to be traveling to these facilities very, very regularly or frequently for other projects. They're calling on these people for other items. Tag along. Just go there just to kind of show your face. This helps you get entrenched within these facilities, and you want your face, your name, your brand, everything that you have to offer to become recognizable within these facilities. That is a super important part of this whole entire plan. And really what this does is this helps build comfort levels and solidifies your relationship along the way. And I would encourage you to do your same with the manufacturers. If you're using us, bring us along. Or if we're walking into a steel facility or a heavy industrial of any sort, we'd like to bring you along. We like to make site visits and do our part to close the deal as well. And the last main tip of closing the deal is staying focused. This is a really important part of this from my perspective, because you're going to want to stay focused on just 1 or 2 projects within a facility at a time. This may sound a little bit odd or crazy, but from walking around Ameristeel, Gerdau paper plants, US steel plants, etc., the first thing that's going to happen when you step foot inside of one of these facilities is they're going to walk you all over every single orifice of that entire plant, and you're going to be sweating to high heavens by the time you get done. And you're not going to know. You're going to have a notepad and a light meter and all these other tools and measuring tools and trying to take measurements and do this stuff. And your paper is going to look like, a kindergartner's drawing, and it's just going to be bad. And you're not going to know where you started, and you're going to have to go right back to the start. They really do this to show you the full potential of the project. But I mean, everybody loves to close a huge project. But if you take on some of those small sections and stay focused, if you do so until you close, you're going to have a much higher rate of closure and a much higher rate of success if you just focus on those one or two small projects to start. And then you're going to want to be sure to stay in contact. Go back to leveraging your resources. If there is a lighting project, your reps, your distributors, electricians, manufacturers are going to hear about it. There will be other people that are going to try to start knocking on the door. You want to make sure that you're staying in contact with that end user or with whoever you've leveraged along the way to ensure that you're going to stay in touch with your inside contact there and maintain that prime position. Remember, you want them to recognize your name, your face, your brand, and you're not going to be able to do that unless you stay in contact and go to these facilities regularly. So alongside of getting your foot in the door, diving into your fixture selection and closing the deal, you're also going to want to probably tag along or bring these with you to tag along, some case studies or marketing materials to use to your advantage. On the left here, we have a case study that we recently did for US Steel. In the middle there, we have a video that we've done for August featuring the 65C13. And then on the far right there, that is our industry quick hitter that I believe we specifically targeted for steel mills. Let's see here. One last thing that I wanted to talk about and mention really quick before we go. If you have any questions or concerns or you need help landing any of these heavy industrial projects, give your local rep a call or shoot them an email. They're a great resource for you to leverage, and they're very knowledgeable about the industry and are ready to help. And you can see there that we've divided the country into three different sections, blue being Cody, white being Brian, and Justin is the orange section. So those are all household names that each of you online here today are very, very familiar with. Do yourself a favor, reach out to them. They can share the tools, the three pieces of information and much, much more that I shared with you earlier. They can give you access to these videos, things like that will be available for download or viewing later on YouTube. They're just a really great resource for you to take advantage of. And for those of you that have tuned in, thank you for attending. I hope that this has helped, and be sure to tune in next month to our Quick 30 webinar series. And remember, be sure to make it a great day.